Welcome to another episode of the First Byte podcast, your guide to topics in IT, web design, and marketing. I'm Eric Bjorndorf. Along with me, I have my esteemed colleague, Nathan Cheatham. Today, we're going to talk about web forms, sexy web forms.
Right. It's interesting because I get a multitude of clients there's a spectrum here. Some people want, hey, just put a link that clicks into an email browser and they can just send it right through there. Versus, people that want some high security.
What is a web form?
Yeah. So a web form is the input boxes that you fill out in like a contact us page, a
Newsletter sign up.
Like it's that very simple looking questionnaire that when you're on a website, you put your information in and you get something out.
Got it. So these two nerds are talking to these people about input boxes on websites.
And it's that important.
It really is. I love it very much.
Yeah.
I love the power that a web form brings to almost every department of the business. Brings lead inputs to the marketing team.
Mm-hmm.
It brings those leads also pass through the sales. It passes to business operations. I don't want to be too specific on the various types of industry, but if you are taking in new clients, if you have an onboarding and intake process, you're a law firm, you're a professional services company, what is your onboarding process like with new customers? Is it to have your secretary or account manager, sitting on the phone? Okay, first name, last name, what's your address? What is your process for intaking new customers? And a web form can do that. Reduce double data entry, reduce errors, lower costs by pushing it onto the customer, right? That's one of the things I love about web forms.
There's also the security aspect to it because you've brought this up many times of, man, the junk mail in my inbox.
Oh yeah, I was complaining about that last week, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Oh God.
So, we all are dealing with junk mail. We're dealing with phishing, a web form or emails on a website is a high priority attack vector.
Oh, okay. You're coming at it from that. Right. So you're suggesting you're running a company and on your contact page, you want to put something there for...
most people want...
leads, prospects, customers.
I would say some people don't even think that far to think about the leads. They're just like, what if someone lands and they have a question?
Right. So instead of putting an email address on the contact page of your website, you're suggesting
a web form.
And the reason being is
because your website can get scraped and pulled for emails.
Scraped. What is scraping?
So that's where a hacker or anybody can essentially just pull that information.
More usually a bot, right?
Yeah.
This is automated. So little programs out there scraping websites all day long, and they're just looking for that format of an email, right?
Yeah.
Something at something dot something.
Right.
And that just gets harvested,
sold on the black market.
Right. Or even legitimate businesses just for marketing, right? So just spam, whatever. So you're suggesting a web form. Okay, so how does a web... I know the answers to this. I'm teeing it up for you, and I'll bounce back. But how does a web form... So a web form obfuscates. That's one of my favorite words. Obfuscates the
word
email.
Of the day.
Yeah. A web form obfuscates the email. So if we have an account manager waiting to receive inquiries on the business, we
want to make sure it's a real person.
Yeah.
And not a bot that's coming through.
Okay.
Because, I've got plenty of intake forms and things all over on different sites, and you always get the automated selling in your contact form. Like, I'm Joe and I, do janitorial services. I get that one.
I get that all the time.
Yeah. And
like, sorry, we don't have an office, buddy.
Right. They've done it's not like they're doing research and they're trying to sell you. They've got a bot that just goes through the internet.
Scrape the email, send the spam.
Yeah, exactly. So there are ways to kind of put roadblocks in place so those don't come through. And
Right.
this is called a CAPTCHA.
CAPTCHA. Yep.
Which Google has a version of.
Click all the bicycles that you see in this image.
Yep. It's the I'm not a robot
Right.
questionnaire.
Right.
And there's different levels. So the first level is a simple math problem.
Right.
Input the correct number.
Right.
They know you're a human.
Mm-hmm.
Gives you that access. From there, the next step is the click the bridges, click the bicycles, click the cones.
Okay,
that
so
are in the street.
So you want to protect your sales at yourcompany.com email box by not just putting sales at your email.com, right? So, okay, you have a contact form.
Yep.
How does that work? We put a contact form on the contact page. And what does the form look like? We're asking for the respondent's first name, last name, email address at minimum, right?
Yeah. How are you going to reach back out to them?
Right. So they click that, and then they have a CAPTCHA, which you just described. We use the CAPTCHA so the bots can't auto-populate that data, right? Okay, I'm piecing it all together.
Yep.
And then they click submit. What happens?
And this is where the magic of having a CRM, client or customer relationship manager, which is essentially software that allows you to just have a database of the people that you're
could be a
emailing
spreadsheet.
with.
It literally could be a Google spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
But it's a database. You're talking about CRM, customer relationship management software. It is the place where you're going to collect all of these email addresses, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we click submit. The information goes to our CRM.
They can do that. What's also nice about a contact form is you can go to multiple places.
Right.
It doesn't have to just go to one place, as would happen if it was just a link. So let's say it's an intake form for a potential client. So you have it go to your CRM, but then there's a notification that goes to the account manager, and maybe the marketing manager is wanting to monitor all this to see, like, is it working?
And how is that delivered?
So that's just
an email, right?
An email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we've got a prospective customer or current customer wanting to communicate to the company, contact us, web form, here's my information. Oh, maybe an input box for what the inquiry is, right?
Yeah, you want a message. I mean, you want to think about it as what's all the information you need to be actionable.
Right.
So if someone just fills out their information of like name and email,
you got no context of what they need.
Yeah, you don't know what they need. So how do you quicken that?
Right.
know, and now do you need to call them? Do you need a phone number?
Right. The input form could actually even offer, do you want to call back? Do you want an email back?
A yes, no question.
Right.
And it's the decision items as they go through. Now, I would always hesitate to have too large of a contact form where you're asking for way too much information, way too much data.
There are use cases for forms, right?
Yes.
Or there's target audiences for forms, right? And this is what I think you're talking about, right? So for what kind of audiences do we have, for example? So you have a lead, right? You have a prospect. I mean, that's how we distinguish it, right? We have a lead who we may know of them, but they don't know of us.
Yes.
Or some early stage of a potential customer, not qualified yet. You have a prospect where now they may know of us and they're kind of qualified to some degree.
Exactly.
And then we say the next one's a customer, right?
Yep.
And then we have vendors and partners and things as well. But let's just kind of put those guys aside for now. All right. So those are the type of contacts. So now we want a form for a lead, for example. So now you're saying what elements should be on a form for a lead.
Well, for a lead, you don't know anything about them and they're just learning about you. So, you're going to need that basic, name, phone number, email, and, maybe you want to know the business. If you're a business to business company, you might want to make sure, well, does this person have a business? Like, is this worthy of my time?
Right. So you're a professional services company and you have, let's back up a step. Where would this lead form be? would be on a
Website.
well, it'd be on a website, but it would be on maybe some sort of they call it a sales funnel, lead funnel, some sort of landing page that is trying to drive the user of this page to submit their information, right?
Right.
This is maybe a drive-by person who is maybe researching your space, your product, your company, and it's like a nibble on the worm on your hook, right?
Right.
And so you don't want to like tug too fast too soon, right? You don't want to try to set the hook too soon. So you're suggesting, just to put this together, don't ask of them too much, right? But ask enough. Like so I see your point. So you're a professional services company, and you have a web page that is advertising your product or your service. And okay, the viewer's interested. Now you're saying for more information or input here, right? Or maybe you have what's called a lead magnet, which is maybe an ebook or some case study, some offering. You give them something so that they give you what you want, which is their email address and their information. So you're suggesting don't have a long intake form.
Make it just what you need.
First name, last name, email, maybe phone number.
And then business, if that's relevant to what you're doing. If you're trying to sell to just regular people, regular non-business professionals, you wouldn't have that information.
Right. And one way of kind of designing that is if you put a company name field and maybe made it mandatory.
Yeah.
So then if you're just some consumer that you don't really, you landed, you wouldn't believe the things people do on the internet, and they it's so funny the things that we see. Okay, so they don't have a business, and then they see the company name required field, and they just either it's a stop and they can't get any further, or they just put something incoherent or whatever, and then you can kind of ascertain or determine.
Yeah.
You start measuring the quality of the lead, right?
Right.
Okay, so that's a lead form, right? What other use cases? What other audiences?
So let's talk about customer forms.
Yeah, I love that.
Where who they are. They're probably in your CRM, and it's a touch point of, maybe they need some service, they need a new product, they need something. You can ascertain, and I mean, take Amazon is essentially this. You want to buy something. You have a workflow through their sales process, which is essentially robust contact forms.
Right.
You're inputting your information, your your address, where the delivery is going to go, the credit card information. All of these are it's a contact form that then has an automated process of charging your credit card. And that goes into, they have like a major software of a CRM, but you could still kind of call it that because it's a production of, then that ticket goes out and they box up your item and they send it out. So there's relevant information there that they have to have and they have to collect. And so you customize that, and maybe, if depending on your company, let's say you're a law firm, a smaller law firm, and you have a form where you are essentially talking to clients that are already on retainer. You just need to know, what is it? Like, what do they need? At that point, it might just be name and phone number and a message of, call me back. I want to know what the status of the recent, court date.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that's one case.
And that allows you to be accessible, as the law firm, where they could call you up.
Right.
But this way it's a little more informal. It's a little bit more accessible. They don't feel like they're bothering you. I mean, everyone when you're dealing with court and law firms and all that kind of stuff, there's a little bit of anxiety. So, allow an easy way for someone to get their question into you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. What about onboarding? That's something I talk about all the time.
What we do at Evernet for onboarding, because it's so darn easy.
That's so good.
We use a little bit more of a robust contact form. It's a multi-input pages.
Yeah. So we adapted web forms
Mm-hmm.
to our customer onboarding process, and it is very robust, and it's not lengthy. Actually, it's only 5 pages, and it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does it at this point in the experience for the customer, they're not yet they've already made the decision. They're like,
Right.
we're going to engage Evernet for their services. So this is the administrative part of that process, and I always love the look on our new clients' faces when they see how easy it is to be onboarded as a client, because none of our competitors are doing this. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody's doing this. And so becoming an Evernet customer client is as simple as so when I get off a discovery call,
Mm-hmm.
the good ones always end with the very last question. Do you know what it is?
Are you ready to get started?
Well, no, it's them asking me something,
Okay.
which is
How do I get started?
how do we get started, right?
Yeah.
And it always comes with this like pressure in their voice, where it says like, I know that the next month or two of our lives are going to be disrupted, and I say, oh, it's simple. All you have to do is be at our website. Are you at your computer? Yeah, I'm at my, okay, pull up the website, go to evernetco.com/onboarding, or find the link at the very bottom in our footer. And they're like, whoa, what's this? I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's just your onboarding wizard. You're going to create your account in our management software
Yep.
yourself, and you're going to select the services that you want. It's going to make all the necessary disclosures
Yep.
and agreements, and when you click submit, you're done. Basically, you're going to launch the deployment ticket, the onboarding ticket that goes to the operations team. The accounts team gets some stuff. We set you up in the billing portal, and it's very slick. And
Now you mentioned something there about the agreements,
Mm.
and these are contracts, because especially in professional services, like there's a level of like you have to have a contract, and so everyone knows what the process is, what the policies are,
or
going
what the
into it.
terms of the relationship
Yeah.
at minimum, yeah.
Exactly. And so to be able to do that with your contact form,
Right. Right.
you're walking through, it's a 5-minute process,
Right.
and you're utilizing this input form.
So your point is the web form is can be more than just a static box, input box.
Exactly.
And that's right. So we actually adopted web forms to be a wizard, which is a computer term that just defines kind of multiple screens
Yes.
of input. And that's that's one of the things that you can do.
So implementing that versus previous, how much time did you save?
Oh my God. Hours.
Yeah.
Hours in the sales and onboarding process. Hours. And not to mention it automated the experience. So every single Evernet client has the same experience every single time. And we can control and iterate that. So we can improve it. If we see a problem, if something changes, we can update. And it's all email and web driven, right? Mm-hmm. So they get, we're having a human conversation for the discovery call. It's usually on the phone or in Teams meeting. And we're talking about their needs. We're talking about how we're looking at their problem and our solutions and seeing if there's an alignment. And when there is, that's when it proceeds to the onboarding. So it's email and web driven. So once they go through and they select and input all the information, they click submit, then they get an email confirmation. Mm-hmm. The internal teams get notified through email, and then our work software, our practice software, management software builds all the entities in our database and all these action items, to-dos, tickets, all these things, and then it communicates to the client every step of the way. So it's like full transparency, and that's our industry, the technology industry, and the marketing industry. I would venture to say every public or professional service should be operating like this. I mean, law firms, CPA firms, financial brokerages, any professional service can operate and should operate like this.
So you talk about like, all right, they've filled it out, and then you say like there's emails going here, there's emails going there, there's data moving around. Are you moving that data? Or are you utilizing another advantage to a web form, which is the automation that can come out of it?
Right. So, yeah, I mean, the automation is is critical. I mean, the automations are being fired through this. I mean, you touched on security. When I hear data movement, I'm immediately my security hat goes on. So no, it's you're operating in a secure browser.
Yep.
The connection's encrypted and secured. The data is landing in an encrypted database, secure database. So I don't know if that's what you were touching on.
Well, no, there's definitely that. That's important, which, if you think about, like, if you're emailing or, going back and forth in different ways, maybe there's even like documents that would have been mailed that could get lost.
Oh, good point. Very good point.
Like, this cuts down on all of that, where you can manage the security from the input
definitely
to the delivery.
Definitely a much more secure way to, I mean, no faxing, no mailing, forms. I mean, all that information is kind of leaving the customer and going right into our database. So yeah, definitely.
But what I was really getting into is that the submit button, it becomes a trigger. And especially when you're utilizing a CRM, which most basic CRMs have a workflow function. So
right.
You've got everything pretty nicely, put together with this submission of the form. So the data's all there. And then how do you take that to the next step of, okay, now I need to get this data moved into certain web app processes that we utilize.
Yeah.
And so coming into that is, you don't have to physically be the one doing it. You can allow that trigger to then set up a workflow automation that sends it around.
I mean, the automations depends on what sector or what division or department of the business, it depends on what business function you're talking about, right? So on the marketing side, which is your game, you've got a product page with an input form, or maybe you got a product page, a lead lands there, learning about your company, learning about your product. You say, give us your enter your information and download this free ebook or case study to learn, to continue learning, right?
Yeah.
Now, when they hit submit, that information, goes to the CRM software that we've talked about. There's free ones out there, so every business should have a CRM software. It's the first software that you should probably have, in fact. And that CRM software will send the ebook or form or whatever the deliverable of the form is, and then you can build these workflows that you described, where maybe you want to send a thank you in a day for downloading that web form. That's what the automations you're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like, let's talk about the sales process here, and you're utilizing in the sales process. So, for most businesses, there's multiple touch points before a client or a customer converts into, or a lead or a prospect converts into a client or a customer.
Yep.
And so you can automate that process so that you're not sitting there going like, oh man, I got 15 people I got to email to.
Oh, right. Yeah, for sure.
You can create in your CRM a message that is geared towards the person that filled out that form, and that can fire in a day, in whatever time period you deem necessary to.
But you can build that experience. That's the same for every single person, which you can then iterate on, right?
Right.
Because I don't know if I say this to you or my wife, but it's hard to improve a process if you don't use it.
Yeah.
And that seems kind of obvious, but if you don't have a sales process for that form, for example, like, you're kind of all over the place. So if you got you got their email address, and then you see them show up in your CRM database, and you go in there, say, oh great, I'll send them a thank you tomorrow. And then another one comes in 8 hours later, 6 hours later. You have to remember, like, okay, I'll send him another, I'll send her another thank you, I'll send her a thank you. And then 3 more come in today. Yeah. You're like, okay, who am I sending thank yous to?
It's got to be scalable.
It's scalable, but yeah, it's a twofer, right? You want a model that scales. You want to leverage automation, and the benefit is that is scalability and controllability, so you can control that experience.
And it's not always a sales process or procedure. It could be. So let's say you have a new client. They've come in. They've gone through your web form, everything that we talked about earlier, as far as like getting them into our CRM, into our web apps, and they are now a client.
Right.
Well, every business, like you go through and you have your terms of the relationship and everything, which is, oftentimes a lot of text that you don't really necessarily want to
Terms of
read.
service.
Yeah, the terms of service, the privacy policy, all those kind of things. How do you educate your client to take advantage of you as the vendor, or and so this is where like a drip campaign comes in.
A customer drip campaign, right?
Customer.
So what is a drip campaign?
So a drip campaign is essentially a set of emails that come over, of course, a time period
That's it.
that just
right
gives you information.
And as you pointed out, it's not just a sales and marketing tool. You can actually leverage that tool for customers. So I got to tell you, to your point, there is a learning curve to becoming an Evernet client. There is a learning curve to becoming a client of a law firm. There is a learning curve to become a client of any, and we talk a lot about professional services businesses here because we are one, and that's who our predominant clients are. But I mean, even at the retail level, I mean, you're getting Amazon is educating you as to how to be an Amazon customer through even that the transactional relationship you have with them. So to your point, yes, the drip campaign and the automation from the web forms is a huge value that a business can leverage.
Yeah, because you might be a business that say you are maxed out on sales, like you do not need to sell for a new customer, but what if you were able to kind of pull back some of that labor, that admin time, through automation, through web forms, and then now you have time for 2 more clients.
Right.
That might be completely, not revolutionary, but
well, I mean, imagine like the first call or second call you have with your client, you're not educating them on how to become a client or how to be a client. So I'll give you a use case. Let's say you're a real estate attorney.
Mm-hmm.
The process you've done hundreds of times, right? You know it inside and out. Your paralegal knows it inside and out. You're doing the title search. You're handling the seller. You're handling the buyer. It's going to happen in a series of steps, right? Well, imagine if when you onboarded your new client who you're representing for the real estate closing, and you give them a series of emails, one that says like, here's the outline of how this is going to go down, dates to be determined, right? Because a real estate closing happens over multiple dates sometimes. But here's the outline of what the process looks like, and here's some communications I'm going to send you along the way, right? Yeah. And then the next one is, we see all the time real estate attorneys are being targeted by hackers because they're handling such significant financial transactions, and we get calls from law firms all the time who have just fallen victim to large financial transaction hacks or thefts, I guess. So imagine you're a real estate attorney and you send a link to your customer on a free cybersecurity training. Please consider taking this during this process with us so that we are best informed from a security standpoint. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, that's all born, this conversation is about web forms, but by leveraging the web forms and, from your intake, now they're in your CRM, that can just trigger all these workflows. Just, I don't know if this should be web forms and email automation, but.
Well, I think that what we're showing is that from the drilled down topic of just a web form, that it expands to so much within your business. Right. This decision point is more than just, does my email contact look pretty on the web page?
Right.
To this is impacting the admin time, the security of my my business, and the education of my client, as well as the sales process. Like,
right.
I really look at it as the sales process is like maybe a third of the conversation here. And when you get into what further you can add as time, getting your time back.
Yeah.
From this.
Reducing double data entry, reducing data error. Again, using the real estate attorney example, you could be the paralegal and you need, we've got your name and information, or we've made phone call contact with you. You're going to use our law firm for our services. Now we need to know information about the property. Maybe just about the property and whatever, your bank or whatever. You can then, draft a standard form that you need further input, and you can email the form, and the form software allows you to get a hyperlink for it, and then you can mail that off. And then when that data comes in, you can see usually when the form's read, you can see when the form's submitted, and the data then goes into your workflow. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Exactly. So, if you are struggling with your time and intaking clients, if your business could, benefit from the conversation we've had here, maybe your website is just lacking on certain tools that could help automate your process.
Maybe the website's not even being managed.
Right.
We see countless businesses that put up a website. They paid some kid to put up a website a couple of years ago, and just kind of it's out there
with no thought to how it integrates into the company. Sales is definitely a key element to think about, but also what can you cut down time wise for your business to even make things simpler. So, if you have to give an employee a task, this web form and the process that you establish could say send an email or send some sort of, like for us, we use like a ticketing service. Maybe it sends a ticket to a certain resource that says do this thing, where you don't have to be the one to say it, because you just know through your workflow,
right,
step 1 needs to be done, step 2, step 3, and you can allow the automation to get you further down the process, which opens you up for, let's face it, family time, these things are important, or other sales, or just getting ahead on.
Yeah, the good way to spot this is if you see, or if you have any repeatable tasks that a person is doing, it can be automated. So that's a good way to spot that. And you gotta as a business leader, you have to press back against personnel, employees that may get protectionist about their job, but once you teach them that, like, these tools and methods that you're bringing them, or that we help bring our clients, the morale kind of goes up, because it feels like
efficient.
More efficient and more productive. Nobody really likes to work inefficiently,
right?
And when an employee sees a task that they can do and they feel content in job security and things, but like once you kind of do that repetitive task over and over and over again, it starts to feel uninspiring. So, I guess that gets into philosophy, but if anyone watching this has a website that they haven't looked at themselves or had under any active management, Evernet has launched the marketing division. We're in-house, so we have a full staff. In fact, I would say the marketing division is nearing the size of our IT division. So it's coming up fast. And so we can help with your website. And then of course the website is a huge business tool when it comes to conducting business. So it's not just a promotion and marketing, and it's not a business card anymore. It's a key tool to conduct business. So I would just suggest they contact us.
Yeah, go to evernetco.com, fill out the schedule a discovery call. You'll see that button.
Yep.
Very widely used around the website, and that will schedule a call with either Eric or myself.
Yeah, I usually vet them, and if it's a marketing need, then I route that to you, and you'll be the point of contact for that.
Absolutely. So, not only will you, get the help you need, but, if you were, we're thinking about these things. These are concepts that we're constantly trying to improve on, move forward, and stay ahead of the game with. So we'll bring that to your business. So evernetco.com.
If you have any questions or comments that you would have liked us to cover, leave those in the comments below. We'll read those. If you haven't already, give us a like on the video and subscribe because Nathan and I are going to be putting out a lot of content coming up. Yeah, be sure to follow us. All of our socials are Evernet CO. So if you go, whatever your favorite social network is, we will be there at Evernet CO.